Updated. My F49 cousin, F23, asked my daughter, F16, to perform at her wedding reception, but became bitter upon seeing the positive reception to her act. She has since posted about her online, and my daughter is considering quitting. I hope this is okay to share here. The reason I'm posting is because of my daughter who's been hurting in the aftermath of a recent performance. I'm sorry in advance for how long this turned out, but any advice from fellow aerialists would be greatly appreciated. My cousin Dana, not real name, had her wedding 2 weeks ago, and she asked if my daughter could perform at her reception. My daughter, Jane, also fake name, has practiced silks, lyra, for the past few years at a nearby circus studio, and she's also performed with through the studio at small gigs. She hopes to continue into adulthood and become a professional teacher, but this recent incident has shaken her confidence. She has a private Instagram to document her progress, performances, and I only post certain performances on my Facebook, her first gig with the studio and her first recital, to name a few we're proud of. Some of our relatives saw her performances through my socials, and they watched her perform at her studio's Christmas recital when we hosted Christmas at our home a few years back, something that surprised her when they visited early to see her. I love how they coordinated that, and Jane said it was her loudest cheering section to date. Dana was one of the relatives who came up early to see her Christmas recital, and she's always been super supportive. She asked me if Jane would be willing to perform at the reception, and I asked on her behalf. Jane was honored and excited when I did, and we already had a portable rig for her too, though we ended up renting a taller one from her studio. Dana got the idea from a YouTube video featuring an aerialist who performed at a wedding reception, and she showed us while requesting white silks and a white outfit. We scoped out the venue and purchased white silks along with a white costume that Dana approved of, and Jane was really excited throughout. Jane even worked on choreography to a song that Dana requested, and she put a lot of time into it, even asking one of her coaches to help her with it. Dana insisted on paying her for the gig, despite Jane not expecting to be paid, and she paid her a few hundred. However, Dana's had a change of heart. Jane received a standing ovation after her performance that surprised her, but we didn't know anything was wrong until Dana went on Facebook a few days later. Dana said she didn't approve of the outfit Jane wore, and that she specifically told her to not wear white. She also said my husband and I pressured her to have Jane perform, and that the performance gave off an unclassy vibe, lies that my husband and I couldn't believe. We sent Dana numerous costume links, and we purchased the one she liked. There was also nothing wrong with Jane's performance. Dana was one of the people cheering afterward. Jane received nothing but compliments afterward, but I'm disgusted that she had to see that post after all the work she put into it. The post also had comments disabled, for what it's worth. I called Dana to confront her about the lies, but she didn't pick up numerous calls. I then called her parents who, like us, had received messages about her post, and they said that Dana was wrong. They apologized on her behalf and said they were also disgusted. Dana's mom also said that Dana vented to her before making her post a few days after the reception. Dana told her she regretted asking Jane to perform given the attention, compliments, and cheers she received for it. Her mom also said that she felt upstaged with Jane wearing white and having to hear how good she was. Dana's parents tried to call her after she made her post, but she didn't answer after their previous conversation ended with her parents telling her she shouldn't be bitter because she specifically asked Jane to perform. Dana's parents reported the post along with us others, and we've told the truth to those who reached out along with a post to explain our side stand-up for Jane. We have text proof of sending costume links that Dana chose from. Dana's parents also requested to talk to Jane on the phone to apologize for Dana's behavior, and my husband and I told Jane that Dana was wrong, and that we'll be distancing ourselves from Dana permanently. Dana's parents were surprised at her behavior, and we were too, having seen her grow up. Granted, we only see extended family for Thanksgiving and Christmas because we live far, but other relatives were surprised too, as it seemed to come from left field. Maybe there's a side of Dana we'll never know from our limited holiday milestone interactions, but our focus is Jane. We've tried to cheer Jane up by offering to take her to dinner among other activities, but she's been hurting, which is why I'm here. Jane hasn't practiced, at home or the studio, since the reception, and I don't want to invade her space at her studio by telling anyone there, in case she doesn't want anyone to know. She asked me to return the white silks and costume after being so excited to receive them. She also said she's going to take an extended break from aerial to reconsider if she wants to continue, Aside from aerial, she's taken a break from seeing non-aerial friends too, choosing to pretty much keep to herself. We would appreciate any advice from fellow aerialists on how to lift her spirits. We remind her of how we're proud of her, along with the many compliments she received. But she's asked for space and to not talk about it. We're going to respect that and let time do its thing, but we'll consider any advice from other aerialists who can relate to the time and work she put in. Sorry for this being so long, but we appreciate anyone who read and takes the time to reply. Additional comments. Commenter 1. This is a rare story on this site, where everyone, except the villain, does everything right. If this happened to an adult, or even an older teenager, she would probably still be hurt, but be able to see that Dana is the one with the issue. But at 16, she's still forming her idea of herself. It sounds like she's taking this all on as a reflection of herself. I'm not someone who can be in the spotlight. My desire to perform hurts my family. I would really consider therapy. You could say all the right things to her, and I bet you have, but at 16, it's hard to hear your mom. Alternatively, and I'm sorry to say this, but is it possible that Dana's new husband gave Jane any inappropriate attention? That might explain why Dana is so upset when she presumably should have known exactly what to expect, although certainly wouldn't excuse it. If there were any opportunities for Jane and the new husband to be alone, I would really look into that also, because it would also explain why Jane hasn't practiced since the reception, even though the drama started a few days later. It is an extreme place to go, but I would just ask yourself if there was an opportunity for him to be inappropriate, because she is withdrawing from her entire social life. When I was a teenager, driving up to the next city over helped me sometimes. Want to take a drive? Is still a question I ask myself when I feel stuck and hopeless. Go to the big aquarium and get cannolis at the outlet mall or something equally random. Maybe she'll open up or get out of her head, or maybe y'all will just have a nice day. Lots of love to you and your family. Commenter 2. Jealousy is horrible, and Dana has just made herself look bad to anyone that came to the wedding. Also, just for reference, I have performed at multiple weddings and have always had a white costume. It suits the theme and is no way comparable to a wedding dress. Commenter 3. I always see aerialists in white at weddings. Take comfort in the internet OP, and hopefully they can use it as a defense with Dana. If she wants to be that way, just post the receipts of how she asked her what to wear, etc. If she's willing to say that for a 16-year-old, or let it go, it'll pass, because I promise, Dana will have some new crazy thing to do very soon. These types always do. Commenter 4. The bride is petty, immature, and ridiculous first off. You must see that, help her see it too if she doesn't already. When people show you who they are, listen. This is a painful but valuable lesson that your daughter is learning very early in her performance teaching career. Just like any obstacle or difficulty in life standing between us and the things we desire, she has the choice to either let it beat her down, or let it lift her up and make more determined than ever. If she truly wants this, and does eventually go on to be an aerial coach and/or performer, she will face even more challenges. This is only serving to prepare her to face those. Making art is vulnerable. Sometimes people won't like it, but that tells you more about them than about you most of the time. Commenter 5. Dana wanted her wedding to be all about her, which is fair to an extent, but obviously not to this extent. And I think she was happy to have a beautiful performance done for her, but forgot that people will congratulate the performer rather than the person who hired the performer. Given how extreme the response was, I would be a bit worried what someone else mentioned about the outside chance that Dana's husband said did something inappropriate. But my guess and hope is it's just a general attention thing. Regardless, it sounds like you and Dana's parents are handling things as best you can. Defending your daughter but respecting her privacy and boundaries sounds exactly like the right thing to do. Well done, you. I would just continue to be there for your daughter in a low-pressure way and make sure she knows she has safe people to talk to whenever she's ready. Maybe see if there are any non-aerial activities any of her friends are down to do with her. Maybe something like rock climbing, which can feel less performance-oriented and attention-grabbing, but can still feel fun for an aerialist because there's a fair amount of strength crossover. Hopefully she'll be comfortable with aerial again in future, but I think just trying to help her not socially withdraw too much would be good for her well-being for now. So sorry she's going through this. She sounds like a great kid and a very talented aerialist. Now for the update. Before I get into what's happened since my last post, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment. 2 pieces of advice really stood out, and I'll get to them shortly. Since my original post, Dana's Facebook post is gone. I don't know if she deleted it or enough people reported it for Facebook to remove it, but we're glad it's gone. She never apologized to us, or Jane, or even bothered to call, so our position on being permanently done with Dana stands. My husband and I made a post on my Facebook addressing the lies she spewed about our daughter, and we shared photo proof of Dana's texts where she approved of Jane's white costume from links we sent, not to mention the song choice she sent us too. Better yet, Dana's mother reposted it on her account, which really surprised me. Dana's mother wrote that they loved Jane's act and that they disapproved of Dana's actions. My husband and I also made sure that Jane was okay with us addressing it on Facebook, and she said it was fine. Normally, I wouldn't use Facebook to address drama if aimed at me. But since this involves a grown adult attacking a minor, we felt the need to address it publicly, because she disparaged her publicly, and Jane will remember whether we stood up for her or not years from now. I had a chance to speak with Dana's mother since my original post on the phone, and she spoke to Dana again since our last call. Dana reiterated how she regretted asking Jane to perform, but she harped on the standing ovation that bothered her the most. Dana told her that she expected Jane to get some polite applause, but that the overwhelming response really set her over the edge, because she expected the loudest cheers to be when she and her husband entered the reception, but that went to Jane instead. Dana and her husband also received a great reception when they entered the reception, but Jane's performance did too, and Dana didn't expect it. Heck, even Jane was surprised by it too. She never received a standing ovation from a solo act before. But Dana's mother believes that if Dana had asked someone to sing who received a similar reception, Dana's jealousy would have been all the same. Someone suggested seeing if Jane would be interested in speaking to a therapist, given how hurtful Dana's comments could be for a teen. And Jane said she's open to it so long as it isn't a counselor at school because, as of now, she doesn't want anyone at school or her studio to know about the incident, and she vaguely told the coach who helped her choreograph that it went fine. We will respect her privacy request as it's her right to control the narrative. But in the same vein, I suggested therapy for Dana to Dana's mother since her reaction might be a bigger insecurity, and she said she'd ask. The other thing someone suggested was the possibility of Dana's husband, or anyone, making an inappropriate comment to Jane during the reception that made her shut down and not want to see friends or practice days before Dana's post. My husband decided to ask her, and Jane said no when he did. If something happened, perhaps she'd be more comfortable telling a therapist with time. But on the bright side, she said she might want to try a different aerial studio because she doesn't want to answer questions about how it went, or share a video, at her home studio, so we will help her find somewhere new as she asked. We hope she doesn't permanently leave her current studio because she has friends and coaches who are supportive, and she performs with that studio's troupe at festivals gigs. But I personally understand the need to sometimes go somewhere where nobody knows you for a break, and we hope that that will help her. She hasn't said definitely yet, but if we does, we'll take her. She still wants an extended break from aerial in the meantime. But even if when she goes back, she said she may never want to perform again and would rather do it leisurely. One of the reasons she doesn't want to return to her home studio where she's a part of their troupe. She asked if we'd tell her troupe coach that she won't perform with them anymore if it comes to it. And if that's what she wants down the road, then we will. Hopefully, time heals this wound and helps her at least keep the friends she has there. But we can only hope. Story 2. Update. I found out the actual reason my mom lost custody of me, and I don't know if I can ever look at her again. I was removed from my mother's care by DCFS when I was 11 years old, due to allegations of SA posed against my stepfather. He was convicted of those crimes, but took a plea deal, which meant he'd be out by the time I was 13, and from what I can remember, I don't even know that he served those 2 full years anyway. I was his primary victim. I don't remember how old I was when it started, but the earliest he admitted to was when I was 8. I don't know if my mom knew before DCFS got involved or if she found out afterwards, but now I don't think it would have mattered to her if she was aware. After being put into temporary custody of the state while the legal issues were sorted out, eventually I was placed with a relative and her husband, who later adopted me when it was clear my mother wouldn't be getting me back. My adoptive parents put me in therapy, got me the help I needed, did everything they could to make me feel safe again. something they never prevented me from, was speaking to my mother. I was always able to call or text her, and she was always allowed to come visit me, but I could never go and see her. I didn't really question it as a kid. I assumed it was some stipulation the courts made. I believed growing up that the reason my mom hadn't gotten me back was because of neglect, I guess. I assumed that the court thought it was partly her fault that I had been left unattended with that man so often, or that it took someone else noticing I was physically injured for something to be done about it. My adoptive parents never challenged these assumptions I had, and they always told me that they would never stop me from having a relationship with my mom so long as that's what I wanted. Once I turned 18, my mom and I started talking more frequently, but we didn't see each other in person often. I never really thought much of it at first, but as the years went by, I started questioning the circumstances of my removal and subsequent adoption. I was confused as to why a woman with no prior issues with the law would have had her child taken from her in such a cut and dry way. I decided to ask my adoptive parents about it, and they very gently informed me that my mother was told that in order for her to regain custody of me, her husband, my abuser, would be required to leave the home and could not under any circumstances come near me. Not only because he was an offender, but because I was the victim. My mother evidently could not meet these conditions, and so I was adopted by my relatives. When I worked up the courage to ask my mom if it was true, she didn't deny it. She told me she loved him, that he was a good man who made a mistake. They said that she could have her daughter, or she could stay with her husband, and so she chose him. She picked him over me. I don't even know what to do with the things I'm feeling now. I feel sick just thinking about it. She's my mother, and she knew what he did. He was convicted of sexually abusing her 11-year-old child, and she refused to leave him. For the past 12 years, she has willingly slept in a bed next to the man that assaulted her daughter. She has stayed married to the man who hurt me. My adoptive parents said they were advised by the therapist to let me figure it out in my own time, as my mother, despite picking that man over me, never made any move to have me near him again. She just wasn't willing to make him leave so that I could be with her. Evidently, the therapist thought it would be more detrimental in the long run to keep me from communicating with my mother entirely. None of that makes me feel better. The past 2 days have felt like a nightmare. I don't understand how she could stay with him. I don't understand why she chose a monster over her child. I'm trying to understand why my adoptive parents didn't tell me, but to be honest, I don't really understand their reasoning either. My mom has been texting me, but I haven't answered. I can't even think about her without feeling nauseous, or so angry I want to cry, or both. My adoptive parents keep checking in on me, but I've only answered the phone for them because I don't want them to drive here out of concern. I really don't even know what to do anymore. Edit. I said this in a comment, but I thought I'd clarify here too. I'm not necessarily mad at my parents. I'm just overwhelmed with the reality of the situation. I don't know how I feel, but I know I need time to feel it. I am still in therapy, which is related to the abuse I experienced, so I do have a professional to rely on for guidance if I need it. And I don't think I'll ever be able to speak to my mother again. I can't get past this to forgive her or understand her reasoning, and I'm not sure I will ever want to try. Now for the update. Hello, I guess I wanted to write a little bit of an update. I didn't expect that many people to see the post. Honestly, I just needed to vent, and I didn't want to dump any of that on my friends or family. I had a therapy session earlier in the week, so I was able to bring this revelation up to my therapist, and we're going to work on ways to help me through processing this. That's obviously something that's going to take time, but I'm sure eventually I'll find a way to live with it, I guess. Right now, I still don't know how to unpack any of the feelings I have about this. I do understand why my adoptive parents went about it the way they did. In the moment, being given that information was just a lot to comprehend, deal with, and I felt betrayed. Not necessarily by them, but I think I did put some of those feelings onto them. That wasn't really fair, and I did try to apologize, but they aren't upset with me for it, and they felt I didn't have anything to be sorry for. They know firsthand how difficult this is for me, and they told me they were already expecting the reaction I had. My adoptive mom said that if she had been in my shoes, she would have been upset too, even if that feeling wasn't entirely directed at the right people. I did speak to them about how I felt, and I asked if they could tell me a little more about why they decided to handle it the way they did. They said that when they got custody of me and saw all the ways the trauma from my earlier childhood manifested, They wanted to do everything to make sure I would be able to grow up as cared for and well-adjusted as possible. When the therapist encouraged them not to tell me the truth or challenge my belief that I'd been removed from my mom because of neglect, they followed that advice. The doctors and my parents thought it best for me to understand my mother's choice on my own. They said that I had already been failed by so many adults in my life that were supposed to protect me, and that they didn't want to add to that list. My adoptive dad also mentioned wanting me to be able to enjoy at least part of my childhood without something like that revelation hanging over my head, which, looking back at all of it, I really appreciate. I don't remember much of my childhood up until I was put into my adoptive parents' custody, and what I can remember isn't great, but the childhood they gave me made up for that in spades. I know the choices my adoptive parents made for me were made with my best interest in mind. I love them, and I know everything they did was out of love for me too. I feel like people misinterpreted what I was saying in my last post about my feelings towards them, so I just wanted to clarify that part of it. Regarding my mother, I essentially told her that I wasn't interested in speaking again given everything I know now. I don't know how she took it, because I've since blocked her number. My parents have agreed to reiterate that message for me if she contacts them, but I don't think she will. I'm never reaching out to her again. I can't do it. I think part of me is always going to be wondering why she did the things she did, but based on all the answers she's given to my questions so far, I'm not sure her honesty would be very helpful to me in the long run. Thank you for your words of encouragement and kindness. I really needed them in that moment, and I truly appreciate you all for it. Thank you for watching.